Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to learn how to export 3D models of your Minecraft creations outside of Minecraft, particularly for 3D printing. This video will focus mainly on the capturing and exporting of 3D models and a very basic overview of how to 3D print them. This is not a 3D printing tutorial, that will be a separate video. With that said, let's get straight into it. The first thing we need to do is make sure that our world is set to creative. You can do that by going into settings and choosing creative, or you can do that when you create the world. The second thing we need is a special item called a structure block. By default, neither students or teachers have access to this block, but there's a simple command we can give the game to allow us to have one. To do that, we simply press enter to bring up the chat command, and then we type in /give at A for all players, and then structure block with a underscore between those two, and then press enter, and now you'll see in your inventory you've been given a structure block, which looks something like this. So now that we've got our structure block, we can go ahead and use it to try and capture our models. So we're going to go here, and we're going to, like any other block, right click to place it. You'll notice that it has 3 parallel lines inside a circle. Those 3 parallel lines show us the x-axis. As you can see in the position in the top corner there, if I go this way, we're moving along the x-axis. Going right and left is along our z-axis, and y is our up and down axis. So, without getting too technical, let's go ahead and use the structure block. To use it, we simply right click on it. As you can see, we're going to do a 3D export. You need to give your structure a name, some coordinates of where it's going to look and scale your object, and once you do that, you'll get a preview over here. These options over here aren't particularly useful. Each number that you put in here is the equivalent of 1 Minecraft block in that direction. So remember that we just said that the x-axis was everything in front of us, so that's going forward this way. Our y-axis is our vertical height of the object, and z is our left and right directions. You can only type in positive numbers into these spaces, so therefore you're limiting yourself to going forwards on your x-axis in front of your character, and on your z-axis to the right of your character, so essentially getting a 90-degree angle of capture. So if you wanted to capture behind or to the left of your character, you would have to place your block somewhere different to capture that. So you really need to think about where you place this block, because it is very fixed in what it can capture. With how many numbers you put in here is up to you. You can go out and roughly measure them by looking at your position in the top left corner. So we're currently on the x-axis at 5. If I walk forward to the corner of my building, I've gone to 25, so that's about 20 spaces that way. And along the z-axis, we're going across from -12 to about 7, which is about 19 steps to this point where we are now. And you could do the same for height, but height's a bit easier. So we're going to go back into our menu. You're going to put those numbers in. So 20 forward, let's say 10 spaces in height, and it took us 19 spaces to the right. When you press enter, you'll get a preview of your model. And it looks like we've captured everything there, so I'm very happy with that. Before you can export it, you do need to give it a name. Simply we'll call it House Model 1, and then we'll scroll down to the export button, and it'll bring up a pop-up window asking you where you want to save it within Windows. Once you've given it a name and find a place to put it, press export, and you've officially exported your model. Now we can use that model to 3D print, so I'm going to quickly show you how to do that. Now we're going to leave Minecraft and use that file for some 3D printing. If you're not going to be using it for 3D printing, you could skip ahead to the time lapse. or after the time lapse, I have provided extra footage of how to effectively use the structure block to capture your creations. I will show you both correct and incorrect placement with explanations as to why. I would recommend this if you're feeling a bit unsure about where to place your structure blocks. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video and it's helped you learn a new skill. If you like the video, please leave a like, a comment, or even subscribe. Also, you can connect with me on either Instagram or Twitter. Both of those can be found at MrC's_ICT. That way you can keep up to date with my activity between videos and we can share ideas and your creations. Until the next video, keep on creating. As you can see, we've gone to our location where we've saved our 3D models and they look something like this. When you double click one of them, it'll open up in Object 3D, which is built into most versions of Windows 10. You'll then need to click Import Model, and depending on what you've built, you might need to do some repairs, but that's perfectly fine. It'll fix it up for everything's stable, and now you can see we've got our essentially the same Minecraft model. All we're going to do here is change the file format to something that a 3D printer can recognize. So we're going to go Save As, and then you give it a name and you get the option of these formats. My 3D printer prefers STL formats, and we just save it there, and it's not a problem if we don't set a 3MF. And then you can simply go to your splicing software, open up the model and export it for printing. To keep it simple, we're going to use the person one that we've done because it's smaller, though you'll see sometimes it might not scale properly. Just going to rescale it to something that's going to fit on my printer. So I think about 5 centimeters in height is good enough. And to save on printing structures, we're going to rotate it so it lies flat. Then you simply export it to your SD card or print it directly and print. Now you're going to see a quick time lapse of that print. For those of you that feel like that might have been a bit much too soon, we're going to do a few more examples of correctly placing the structure block so you can capture exactly what you want, as well as a few examples of where not to place it and why that doesn't work. So we're going to move on now to capturing a 3D model of this person statue that I've built. Here's the structure block from earlier. So to use it, we're simply going to right click, and I've already put some coordinates in here. And I've said 10 by 10 by 10. Now you can see that in our preview all we've got is the structure block and part of the arm above us. The reason for that is because remember when we looked at the symbols on our structure block, the x-axis is facing this way. So even though we've told it 10 units, it's actually because we're facing that way, it's going to at the left of the screen at the moment. 10 that way, 10 high, and our z-axis is actually towards the house. So if we actually made that bigger, we'd start getting the house in our preview because that's the z-axis because we've rotated. So obviously this isn't a good spot to put our structure block. So we're going to have to again line up our x-axis, and we're going to think of a 90-degree angle in front of us and to the right. So if we place a block, I reckon about here, you can see that I've got some settings left in it, and if we're facing directly in front, we're going to get 6 blocks forwards, 11 blocks high, and only 5 blocks to the right. And then we can export that. Obviously this is a world I've been playing a fair bit and I'm quite familiar with where the x-axis is, so I'm going to quit this world and go to a completely new world that I'm not familiar with and show you that the same principles and steps apply. So we're going to go to this creative town. That's one of the defaults built into Minecraft. They've got some very fancy structures that I'm sure would have taken a lot of time. So this one I've still already given myself a structure block, but we can do that again. Just enter / give at a structure block, enter. Got ourselves a structure block, so we're halfway there, and I've already enabled the coordinates to help us. So I'm going to take a quick walk forwards. So I'm currently on my x-axis, this being, if I'm walking forward, I'm going in a positive direction. Therefore, if I go right, I'm going in a positive z, and to the left is a negative z, and our y-axis is pretty self-explanatory. So let's say we want to capture this little gazebo looking thing. So we're going to make sure we're facing positive x and positive z, and we want to capture it all, so we're going to pop a block, I think about here. Right click to open up our menu. I actually don't know how far across it is, so let's take a guess with 20, probably about 10 high, and I don't know, maybe about 15 to our right. Okay, let's, and we don't want that offset, we want the ground with it. Alright, so as we can see, we've got definitely more than enough on the z-axis going across. We could probably trim that, and it's got enough to get the other light posts, so I think we're pretty good. Might just trim that z-axis back. That looks like about 4 blocks, so we'll make it 11. Yeah, much neater. And then we can simply, let's just call it a hut. Simply export it and save it. Similarly, if we want to export this really big house looking thing, we can't put our structure block here because if we're going to go that way, we're moving in a negative x direction as the numbers are getting smaller. So if we want to capture this house, we need to go actually behind it and face this way. Because we can fly, that's nice and simple. We're going to jump over the back of it, and I do have a block from earlier saved here. As you can see, it's facing in the positive x direction and positive z direction. So if we open up the menu, unfortunately 32 is the maximum you can do, so we're not going to quite capture all of this lovely thing, but you could definitely do another structure block later on, and if you're fancy, you could probably merge the files together.